we have Ayovi Okorodudu. He is going to be talking about the shift of 5G edge computing with cloud gaming on the rise. So let's take a look and see. So he is actually currently a assistant vice president for the EMEA carrier business of HGC Global Communications based out of London. He is responsible for EMEA carrier data and evolving digital business development and strategies. Ayovi has over 6 years of experience with HGC in both business development and technical delivery across various sectors. So this guy has a lot of knowledge whenever it comes to just like digital management and stuff. So like I'm really looking into seeing what he has in store for us. So without further ado, Ayovi Okorodudu, please uh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Take the stage.
Take the stage. Yes, take the stage.
Hi, everyone. Good evening from London, yeah? And thank you so much for having me today. My name is Ayovi Okorodudu, and I work for HGC Global Communications, based out of the London office. Our HQ is based in Hong Kong, and our specialization is in information, communication, and technology, meaning that we provide a platform that allows gaming company to host their services in Southeast Asia and to ensure that gamers have a very good experience in engaging with the games and enjoying the games as well. Without further ado, I'd like to go into the presentation to inform you about some of the things we're going to talk about today. So there's lots of gamers out there. There's lots of software developers. The most important thing in some cases is we have very intelligent people who specialize in providing the games themselves, which is pretty good stuff. But these games, they need to sit on a platform. And this platform is where SGC, Global Communication, comes in. And my main focus today is going to tell you a little bit more about what is happening in Southeast Asia and why we believe that Southeast Asia is full of gamers, and some of you that are gamers should already know that by now. So I'm going to move to the next stage of the presentation, the second page. Now, in Asia itself, there have been a very high numbers of gamers, ranging in billions. Now, it's for you to play games, what you need a mobile phone, an end devices, a computer. You can use a laptop, you can use an iPhone, you can use any sort of devices that allows you to connect to the internet. And as you can see from the presentation, is in Asia, there's been an increase in lots of gaming, and there will be more increase in mobile gaming in Asia Pacific, especially referring to Southeast Asia. Now, without mentioning just Asia, this is also a global phenomenon, meaning that there's lots of end users such as yourself all going into gaming online, and they can just log into the internet and play as much games as they want, which is fantastic. However, the gamers also are getting more popular in terms of the amount of prize winnings that can be done as well. But the people that actually provide these games, they also have to make money too. And how did they do this? It's very interesting. Is they look for something called eyeballs. Eyeballs meaning populations that can actually get involved in playing games. Now, in Southeast Asia, as you probably know, when you combine the whole of Asia together, there are more than a billion people. And what that means, is if you imagine that each individual have more than one end devices to connect to the internet and play any sort of games that they want. That said, the numbers of gamers are growing rapidly, and it has been estimated that by 2023, there will be 5.2 billion gamers in the world. I do believe that this will be more. this will be definitely more, especially in the area of esport games, which is very, very interesting because you have the likes of the game producer like Epic Games providing some kind of a meeting point whereby they do a kind of a sport games whereby lots of people can actually participate and the winner takes all. This has actually led to the increase in games in Asia quite a lot. But you still have, young lads still playing Pokemon Go's and those type of things. Those are the type of things that are actually pushing the games a lot more as well. But we do believe that, in Asia Park, there will be lots of gamers moving into the scene. Now is you have the gamers, which are the end users. You have the application developers, but the application developers, you also need the infrastructure to host your game. And this is the interesting part. Everyone always said, oh, well, I can develop a game. Good, you can develop a game, but also you can decide to develop a game and stick it up in, you can put it in Amazon, you can put it in any of the platform. But at some point, you're going to need a private network to allow you to access those particular games. And I think this is the most important things that we need to talk about today. The next stage of my presentation is to give you a little bit of more view about why we think that there's lots of people, the populations globally, especially in Southeast Asia, why we think that there are going to be huge numbers of people logging into gaming environment, either via any gadgets. It could be iPhone, as I mentioned before. It could be on the laptop. It could be on a normal desktop computers. And sometimes it could even be Xbox as well, which is also fine. So you pick China as an example. China have more gamers than the US. The US have more gamers, but so is Japan. And so is Republic of Korea, which is South Korea. And of course, in Europe, where we are based, there are lots of gamers, but not as small as you could see in China and in the US. Now, what is actually leading these young and not so young people actually going into gaming? Now, we believe that it is because of the sports, meaning that, the large organizations are actually investing lots of cash in people to play their games. So when there's a winner, the winner take all. Sometimes these games are launched in Japan. Sometimes they are launched in Hong Kong. Sometimes they are launched in China as well. So when the US guys actually log into these games, they compete with their counterparts globally. When the guys in Europe also want to participate in this game, they also have to compete against other players in Asia. Now, the interesting part is, you might wonder, oh, why? There's what of places like Africa, what of places like India? Of course, they do actually compete as well. But you also have to bear in mind that in China, in the US, and in Japan, you have more internet users. However, in some places in Asia, it is quite difficult compared in India with huge numbers of population. Not everywhere people have internet access, even though they have the mobile phone to actually connect to play games. Just maybe the internet connection is not good enough to participate in this game. But we do believe that in Asia and even some part in China, there would be more internet users connecting communities together to actually participate in all type of different games that is being launched currently at the moment. What I was referring to here on this particular slide, I'm referring to the numbers of online gamers in Southeast Asia. Now, in Southeast Asia, there's been an increase in the numbers of game players in that part of the region. So we estimated that there will be an additional 290 million people in 2023 connecting to the games. So what this really means is currently is you have individuals with maybe 2, 3 end devices connecting to games, and they are playing lots of different games. It could be, for example, they're using their mobile phones, they are using the desktop, they're using any sort of handheld devices that can log into a game. And what this really means for the gamers themselves is they need to connect to servers, they need to connect to a very low latency connections in that regions. So you should imagine, for example, you might have a gamer that is based in Asia who is playing a game in Asia. We need a platform that is based in that regions. But this is what some of the main game providers are actually looking into, because they realize that the growth in terms of the numbers of monetizations of gamers that are connecting into Asia, we doubled quite a lot. So what this really means in terms of gaming revenue is, you should imagine that, okay, in the US, in places in Europe, but in Asia, they can see more benefit in terms of saying, okay, well, we need to have more gamers in that region. So we believe that the numbers of gamers in terms of growth will doubled in 2023. Now, is when we refer back to the esport games, such as you have lots of different esport games. You can even put Fortnite as part of that. You can put the Legends also as part of those games, as part of the esport. We have seen a great growth in that region in people participating in playing games, either playing games with their friends or playing games with new community, or playing games with different group of people as well. And the owners of those games, actually, they invest lots of dollars in saying, oh, well, is anyone that win this game can take, and the winners take all, So I think that, you have, the guys in China saying, oh, well, if I play games against my US counterpart, my European counterparts, or my African counterparts, if I'm the best, I win everything. So this is also leads to the huge amount of gamers that is increasing quite a lot in Asia Pac. Not just in Asia Pac, we also have to look at it from a global perspective as well. The more users in Asia Pac logging into games, so is more users in the rest of the world also logging into games at the same time as well. I'm going to move to the next page, which is the third slide now. And the third slide is referring to the top countries in terms of game revenue. In terms of game revenue, we see China as number one. We see US just behind China in that aspect, and Japan just behind the USA, and of course, South Korea, which is Republic of Korea as well. Now, then you then have the rest of the world, which is, in Europe. Now, in China itself, there's lots of gamers in that region. They are particularly interested, not just playing games for fun, not just doing things that will make them different, the things that they cannot do in real world, like flying, for example. They're actually playing games to actually win some of the best, the best opportunity that could come their way, as an example. So we have made that conclusion that in Asia Pac, for you to actually participate in a gaming competition such as esport, you need the right platform to participate in that game. That I will explain in my next slide. Okay. Now, however, you also have Asia, you have India, you have other regions also in Asia that could not access games just like the way the guys in the US, the guys in Japan, or the guys in China have this particular access. The reason is just very simple, just because they didn't have internet access, or they might have internet access, but maybe they could not afford gadgets, or maybe they could not afford the end devices that allows you to connect into the internet, or just maybe there's a delay in when they connect into the internet for them to participate in the same game that everyone else is playing. That could also be said also in Africa as well, in some region. But we do believe that things are changing rapidly, that you have lots of these gaming company, you have lots of this infrastructure-based company building lots of cable infrastructure into the ecosystem to allow the communities around that region to participate and play games with their counterparts, either in the US or in China or in Japan. Okay. Now, is what really make a game so beautiful? Why do people play games? What really encouraged them to play game, you know? I spoke to a gamer just a couple of days ago, and he says to me, Yovi, I like playing game because it's fun. I can have my own community. I can play with other people. I can compete with other people. However, sometimes when I do play games is what I realize I can do things that I couldn't do in real life. Now, this is where company like CSGC come into play. You might have the most intelligent people in the world. They develop all these beautiful applications out there, you know, that allows, you know, the young and not so young to actually play games. But the most important thing also we have to remember is this platform needs to sit on an infrastructure. And this is my next slide that I'm going to explain to you at the moment. Now, is for you to build an infrastructure, you have to think about lots of different aspects of it. Either you're building the games or you're building the infrastructure. So you have to decide, for example, you have to say, okay, you know, you build a beautiful game for the communities to play, billions and billions of people to compete, billions and billions of people to have fun, billions and billions of people to actually pay maybe $1, maybe 50 cents, maybe they have to pay some kind of registration fees and input their details, their name, their address, date of birth in some kind of portal. Now, once those information are all out there in what you would refer to as the cloud, you know, then what happens next? Three things happen mainly. The first is the developers of those games, they need to ensure that the information you enter into those platforms are safe. Your name, your address, your telephone numbers are safe. They need to make sure that if there is a leak in security, how did they mitigate such a risk? And this happened in real time as well. However, those that produce the game also said, oh, well, you know, how comes David has been playing this game for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, but this game should have been 4 hours. Like Fortnite, for example, I believe there's a time limit, in some cases 3, 4 hours. But if it's more than that, you keep on losing. There's a rationale behind that. It's not that the game company doesn't want you to play. It's not that the game company doesn't want you to make money. They just want to make sure that, you know, you are also playing this game in a very safe environment as well. Now it's the same company that is also ensuring that your information is safe, that the information that you provided are not put out there in the public. The same company also needs to push out advertisement to you. So imagine that you're playing Fortnite as an example. Once you're playing Fortnite, there might be a push out screen, a pop-up screen just on the corner that goes, oh, Mr. David, you play good Fortnite. Perhaps, you know, you can play another game of ours. That game can be even Pokemon. can be something else, can be any other game that they think that you can actually play. And in some cases, you might pay for that game. In some cases, you might not pay for that game, but I can assure you that, there would be some sort of advertisement that would attract your eyes for you to actually find it so interesting to actually pay some kind of maybe, a minimum token for you to go to the next stage or play another different type of game. Now, is in a real-time environment of the gaming infrastructure is the same organization, they also understand if you're playing in an esport game. A gentleman, Dave is in the US. We now have our colleagues, Fujimoto is in Japan, all playing the same kind of game. The game understand that, oh, well, Dave in the US perhaps like a different type of game. Maybe it's not so good. He won the game or he lost the game. It could be better by buying some kind of ammunition, by buying some kind of skin or all sort of stuff. The game will suggest a way for that particular player to get better. That said, is combined together, you need all this game also to sit in an infrastructure. But the most important thing I need to emphasize here is, even though we love games, this game needs to be as close as possible to the user. Meaning that if you are in Asia Pac and your server is in the US, you are most likely to lose to the guy in the US. The same in reverse. If you are in the US and your server is far away from the US and you're playing a game that is launched in Asia Pac, you're most likely to lose also. So the important thing is what we're referring to is called the latency. How do you get the game close as possible to the end user, to David and to Fujimoto? Now, even though if you have the game as close as possible to the end user, what actually happened? You might have Dave and his friends playing. You might have Fujimoto's and his friends playing. You still have to understand how the companies that provide these games actually note that, oh, well, there's a group of friends in Japan playing against a group of friends in US. There's a group of friends in Europe playing against a group of friends in anywhere in Southeast Asia, maybe in Hong Kong or in China. This information helps the company that launches this game to pinpoint what sort of information needs to be pushed out there to this group of people. It is so important that for them to do that and for the competition to be fair and to be good, the game companies needs to place their infrastructure as close as possible to the users. And now this is where network latency comes into play. CSGC being an Hong Kong-based company with connectivity across Asia, meaning that if a gaming company have a server in the US, have a server in Asia, a guy in Hong Kong playing against a guy in the US, the game is fair. It now depends on the response time. And the delay also is minimal to what they are playing. So the most important thing I'm trying to pinpoint here is we have the intelligent guys who produce the games or program the games. These games needs to sit on a cloud, as you call it. You can call it a data center. You can call it somewhere that you don't know where it's based. It could be in London, it could be in New York, it could be in Massachusetts, it could be in Beijing, it could be in Hong Kong, it could be anywhere. But what we are saying is the game needs to be as close as possible. However, in Asia Pac, what we do is we ensure that when the companies that are producing these games come into play in Asia Pac, we try as much as possible as a company to ensure that is the numbers the numbers of users. If they are in Tunisia, as an example, what we will do, we will ensure that we can provide them with the right solution in terms of providing them either a data center, a server space, an IP transit. You at home, you might call that as an internet connection, so that when the users actually log into these games, they are able to compete fairly and equally, so that when the prize money is actually issued out, it's issued out fairly as well at the same time. Now I'm going to go a little bit further just to pinpoint what I mean by getting the user as close as possible to the locations where they play the games. So you should imagine that you are in Tokyo or in Manila or in Singapore, as an example. And now the closest place for your server to be could be in Hong Kong, which is also in Asia and in Southeast Asia. Or if it's possible, your server can actually be in Tokyo as well. And I'm sure that, once you are playing a game, you have a choice to pick where you want your server to be. You guys in the US, I know that in New York, for example, you can pick New York to be your server, or you can pick the US as well. That gives you maybe a round trip delay in the US, or a latency delay of maybe 10 milliseconds, if not 5 milliseconds. But then in Asia Pac, exactly the same happened. So you might have one in Hong Kong, also give the end user the same latency, meaning that once you log into the game, your response time is as equal as the guy in the US. I use the word David instead, in the US, And of course, if you are in Madrid in Europe or in London in Europe, you also have the shortest latency to connect into a gaming platform to allow competition to happen equally. Now, how do we do this? Is you need a couple of things to actually have a service. You need a data center, you need power space, you need rack space, and then you need the servers that goes on those space, and then you need the applications, which are the games, to sit on top of those servers. And this is where the users then log in via an IP or internet connections and connect through the IP transit. This is a complete solution that SGC does globally for gaming providers, especially in Asia. We do that in Europe as well, but mainly 80% of the time is mainly done in the Asia Pac. So the next slide just gives you something called the latency. When you log into a game, the most important thing you want to do, you type in, you go into a website, what you want to do, you want to see a quick response like everyone else. No one wants to waste time, So for example, in Hong Kong, where we have lots of data centers, in Singapore, exactly the same thing as well. When a gamer log into the platforms, it's about 3 milliseconds, meaning, I've been talking for more than, God knows, 20 minutes now. So you could count 1, 2, 3, and the users is already in the network. The same also apply for the users in the US as well. So if you are in South Korea, you want to log into a network to play a game, the most important thing you need is you need latency. You need the most shortest latency as possible. What you don't want to do when you're playing a competitive game is to freeze up. Once you froze, you lose the game. You know, you basically just lose the game. Or imagine, the very simple games such as Pokemon. I remember, I took my I was going through around, I got to find a Pokemon very close by, just immediately I put on my, trying to, so this is my Pokemon. I just, something just happened. I just couldn't see the Pokemon anymore. The reason is because it might be my phone, wish I that. It might be the internet connection, wish I that. It might be just some kind of, latency that actually led to such, such a loss. And once you are in a competitive game, I don't think that is what you really want to see. So in Asia Pac, we have various ways of actually implementing lots of low latency network for gamers community, gamers providers, and most importantly, the infrastructure is there already for us to provide the lowest latency to connect to the platform. Now, you've heard me talked about SGC can provide the platform that allow gamers to connect to the games within 5 milliseconds, within 3 milliseconds, in some cases, within 2 milliseconds. We cannot do this ourselves. Just like the way the programmers, once they produce their games, they also need to bring those games onto an infrastructure. Now, it's for you to move these games onto a platform that allows the end user to connect to this game, you need what you call a data center. So data center is just a physical space with lots of racks, with lots of power. This data center is also the same locations also that you have what you now call the cloud services, AWS, Azure, Alibaba. They also need the physical locations. The application sits in the servers in those data centers. Once this sits in there, you also need some kind of connectivity, which could be fiber connectivities. It could be dark fiber connectivities. In that particular instance, this type of solutions are provided by the carriers. Now you have the data center, which now refers to the cloud. All your services is there. You have the carriers who now provide the so-called fiber that allows the bandwidth and the IP transit and the IP connections to go into the World Wide Web that allows the end application user, such as Dave and Fujimoto, to connect. But also, you also need the mobile network providers. They are the ones that provide us with the mobile handset that allows us also to connect and play games. But of course, not everyone uses mobiles to play game. Some people use PCs, some people use tablets, but you also need the mobile network as well. Because I remember buying a phone, and in my phone, there was an app already installed in my phone for me to play a game. I can do that. Why not? So nice. In essence, SGC, we work with various partners to ensure that the platform for gaming companies and to allow end users to connect to those gaming companies, to connect to those applications, to connect to their favorite games, We work with partners in some cases. In Hong Kong especially, we use our own infrastructures. In some part in Tunisia, in Philippines, in China, even though we have our own data center, we still need to partner in some cases with those that can provide us with huge bandwidth and IP transit as well. Once you have your data center, you have your infrastructure, you even have the application that sits on this data center, could be in Amazon, in Azure. We need to offer what you call a service level agreement, which is referred to as an SLA. Now, the importance of doing this is just like the way you have quick response by the end user to connect into a game, the infrastructure providers such as CSGC also need to have some kind of an agreement with the game providers. So imagine a game provider that is launching a product or launching some kind of esport game in Hong Kong, and they have maybe 100 participants. But on the day of that game, the participant gone up to 1,000, 1,300,000. Now is the ability to flex up the required bandwidth to allow those gamers to continue to participate in those games is very crucial. And this is what we do well. So basically what I'm trying to emphasize here is the flexibility and the idea to scale bandwidth, either IP transit, either servers location, either data center, moving more racks, having people on the ground to provide the infrastructure that allows gaming company to launch products is so crucial that lots of people always take this for granted. You need that flexibility. You need a company that can actually go on site. You need people on the ground. You need people to provide all the services that is required and provide the same SLA as something that has been previously planned or either planned or unplanned. You still need to give the availability to the end user, because what you don't want is once the game starts, you cannot afford to have a downtime. And I think this is what in Southeast Asia is very, very, very crucial. And perhaps, but I would say that this is also encouraged lots of gamers as well, because nobody wants to play games that takes you long to just to have access to that particular games. So we would say across the services that we provide for gamers, the service that we provide for gaming company, we have standard round trip delay. The latency is very, very, very minimal. And at the same time, we also make sure that there's enough bandwidth for the end users and for the gaming company to actually continue with their normal business. Now, to run a game, I must say that, is of course, I mentioned about fraud, I mentioned about data encryption, but let's talk about fraud as an example. We have to be very careful here. You install an application in a data center, the game is going on, and then there's a guy who just keep on playing for 6 hours, keep on playing for 12 hours, keep on playing for 24 hours non-stop. That cannot be right, The gaming company, they also have some kind of devices, some kind of application that put a push notification out to ensure that, is Dave in the US is David. Fujimoto in Japan is Fujimoto. Now, also, the data that you put in this game needs to be encrypted end to end. There's various encryption methods out there that people use, but majority of companies use the AEC, and that is acceptable as well. However, whether it's fraud detection, data encryption, there's nothing as important as the user's experience. The user's experience is the most decision maker that decide if a game is successful or not. As such, SGC also always ensure that, is if the game providers are looking to expand in various parts in Asia, we ensure that they would have the right data center, the right IP transit connection, the right cloud services, the right infrastructure to support the end users. Because the journey of the end users to play a game needs to be as crystal clear as possible. The latency needs to be as minimum as possible for them to enjoy their game. So now what do we do? You have all the gamers in the US, all the gamers in China, in Japan, in Europe, all across the board. Sometimes the games are launched either in AWS, either in Microsoft Azure. But you have to bear in mind in some cases is the more the game becomes popular, the more the developers or the owners of this game, they would prefer to have their own control. But how can you have so much? You need to have control. You want to have control of the amount of servers you have, the amount of IP transit connection you have. You want to cut down cost. You want to make sure that you employ your own people to look after your games. The reason of doing this is you have better control of the end users in terms of, is you can flex up your bandwidth as you wish. You can do that automatically, of course, using the cloud provider services. But if you can have control of what you are providing to your end user, I can assure you as a game provider, you are able to cut down cost while at the same time providing the same solution that you've always provided, and if not even better. So if you want to launch a new product, you can also do that easily. You can do that in Southeast Asia within 24 hours. You can also, of course, do that with the normal cloud services. But if you have your own platform, you're also able to have that flexibility to launch services as fast as possible as you can. So in the public cloud, I'm referring to the World Wide Web. In the private cloud, I'm referring to this is your own domain as a game provider that allows you to have as much eyeballs as possible in Asia Pac. This is the type of services that we provide. So if you want eyeballs from Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Hong Kong, China, you need a system integrator that can allow you or gives you the flexibility to provide this type of the infrastructure that allows you to put your servers, allows you to put your applications, and at the same time, the benefit of that is that your end users are also able to access these services at the speed of light. So I will end my presentation today, and I will end it by saying that game is not just all about competition. It's also about having fun. It's about having online communities. It's about doing the things that you would not normally do in real life. I mentioned flying as an example. But for this to happen, you need an infrastructure, especially in Southeast Asia, which have one of the biggest gaming community in the world. to enable you to do this, you need somebody like SGC that can provide you not just the data center, not just the cloud services, not just the IP transit, not just the people or the man on the ground that can go into that data centers, press the button, power off, power on, that can ensure that, the services that is provided is scalable, is flexible, and most importantly, cuts down the latency for the end players, and then can make the players win. I think that would be the end of my presentation for today. I will take any questions if there's one.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking today at CSGC 2021. We have a few questions. One of the questions is that are these kind of cloud services more aimed at larger scale gaming companies? Is it something feasible that indie game developers should be able to incorporate into their development?
Akram, could you please repeat that question again? I think I lost you a little bit, yeah?
Oh, okay. So the question was, are these cloud-based servers, are they more aimed at large-scale game companies, or is this something that feasibly the smaller indie game development companies could afford to be a part of?
Oh, that's a very, very, very good question, Akram. I have to say that, SGC is open to working with the small company, the medium-sized company, or the big company. Now is for those small-sized company that we are referring to is we can partition, we can support them, because to move into the Asian market, I can assure you it's not easy. But we are there already. So we have the infrastructure, we have the people on the ground, that can aid small organizations who want to launch their products, or they already have a product launch and they want to move to the next level of actually engaging with more eyeballs, more players. We can even recommend to them the best locations where some of those gamers are. We can even recommend to them the best locations to put their servers, or we have servers that they can have partition of. This we can do. But all I can say is you can log into our site, SGC, and I'm sure, Akram, you will send that site out to the audience for them to actually check out. Or they can contact me directly as well. I hope that answered our questions.
Yes, it does. One last question here, because we've got to get our next speaker on. But the next question, you had the slides where it showed the gaming in most countries, like China and U.S. being the very largest ones. Do you see a trend of more countries getting on these servers, more countries having larger access?
Are you referring to this slide?
Yes.
Okay. And your question is
so we're seeing like the top revenues in these the China, US, and Japan. So are you seeing a trend maybe in some of the other Asian and European markets getting on these cloud services to increase their revenue?
Of course. We just, I use the word, it's number games. In China, you have more populations. However, US might not have more population than China. They have less population, but actually there's more younger people. It's also about education. More younger people wants to play games. They have more time. They have internet connections. They have access to multiple devices. It's the school that they go to, everybody talk about the same games. My friend is playing Fortnite. Yes, I want to play Fortnite. My friend is playing League of Legends. I want to play League of Legends. My friend is playing PUBG. I want to play PUBG. So what we are saying, there would be a cash up, but sometimes the cash up also depend on the infrastructure that is in place and the numbers of people that's, of course, sharing that particular infrastructure. But what we see, as far as I can confirm, some parts in Asia are actually developing and investing a lot in broadband connections. They're investing a lot in submarine cables. They're investing a lot in education, and that also result in more gamers coming onto the scene as well. And I think that Europe is pretty solid, but it's also possible as well that the mentality of gaming might not be as more as what is in the US or China. So it depends on how you look at it, though. It depends on how you look at it. But I do see lots of, I do believe that there will be an increase in numbers of gamers across Europe, but not as much as the US or in Japan. I doubt that. But who can tell? I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate you joining us today at CSGC 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Akram. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye.